all the lectures, and given the current pace, today I'll start talking about the family, and what's the next topic? Does anybody have a copy of the syllabus? So family, education, and then? So I don't know if we could cover all of those, because this is our 5th week, last class. So, we have a national holiday in May sometime. So that means we will have to forego, not cover one topic from the syllabus. And what should it be? Take a look at the list. I think, at least in the first half, I have to not cover one of the 3. Family I'll have to cover. But between education and gender inequality, I think I'll go with gender inequality. Okay? So, family, gender inequality, and education will not be covered for the midterm exam. Okay? Right? This is our 5th week, last class. So we have only 2 weeks before the midterm exam. And we'll just do family and gender inequality. Right? Any other questions? The exam questions will comprise of short answer types and essay type. And the exam is usually long, so you make sure you relax your fingers. By the time you finish writing the exam, you'll feel some pain in your fingers. That's usually the complaint I get, that it is too long. But with the stuff that we cover, I wish we had a 3-hour-long exam, you see? And that's the way it should be, really. To really test how much you know, right? So be prepared for, let's say, hour-and-a-half exam rather than hour and 15 minutes, okay? Any other questions? Okay, I'd like to wrap up our long journey into this Korean culture by briefly talking about the influence of shamanism, especially for young Korean students. I don't think they really understand how much shamanized Koreans are, and I began to talk about how what shamanism is and how that has penetrated, or how Buddhism has incorporated shamanistic elements, right? And you saw all those lanterns with prayer items, and the way Buddhism is practiced by Koreans. It is not meditation for most Korean Buddhists. It is to pray for material wishes, like those who believe in shamanism do. Okay? As I told you about Japanese Buddhism too, officially it's Zen Buddhism, meditation. You try to live your life aesthetically, meaning you try to avoid, like trying to seek pleasure in life. Because that is the opposite of, Zen or Sun Buddhism. But if you look at Korean Buddhists, they don't really try to sort of stay away from earthly desires, right? And I think I just started to talk about how, to a certain extent, Korean Protestantism has also emphasized the aspects of prosperity and health in addition to salvation, in trying to appeal to the masses, right? Now, if you're not Christian, if you're not Buddhist, you may go, then what else is there that makes many Korean scholars to say that the roots of Korean mental landscape are shamanism and Confucianism? Now, let's look at the examples like this. I think I told you how, if you look at the proportion of Koreans who have ever been to a fortune teller, it's quite higher than, let's say, the figures you find in the West. And also, when people go to fortune tellers in the West, they typically, ask fortune tellers, "What is my fortune like?" But in the case of Koreans, we also have